Welcome to this edition of Diligence Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, and I will be your host for today's show. So it's that time of the year. It's time for us to look at Spencer Stuart's Board Index. It's a survey that they do every year, Fortune 500 companies, and we're going to take a look at the highlights from 2019. And joining me is somebody that's been on the show a lot, but it's always nice to have her back.
Thank you.
Please welcome Julie Daum, who's the North American Board Practice Leader with Spencer Stuart. Welcome back, Julie.
Thank you.
So today we're on top of the New York Stock Exchange floor, so it's a sort of an iconic spot.
Yes.
And it fits in very well with your survey. So, so your survey was recently released. So I guess my first question would be, what in the survey did you think was the most significant highlight? Like what sort of made you look twice?
So this was our 34th year of doing the Spencer Stuart Board Index, and we did see changes this year. And probably the most dramatic was the percent of women and minorities entering the boardroom. So of the new directors this year, 59% were women or minorities, which is a huge leap. Of that, 46% were women, compared to 40% last year. One of the things, though, that's interesting is that it sounds like then there should have been a dramatic change in the percentage of women in the boardroom, but because turnover remains very slow at about 8% a year, board seats turning over, we saw the percentage of women go from 24% last year to 26% of all of the board seats. So in spite of the fact there were 46% of the new directors were women, it moved the needle a little, but not a lot.
Well, but if you look at the growth from other times, 24 to 26
Yes.
was a pretty good swing.
Yes.
Not fast enough,
Yeah.
but a pretty good
Yes.
swing. Also a small milestone in that all S&P 500 boards have a woman on it now. And
It's hard to believe that's a milestone in this day and age.
I think it was a year and a half ago that there was 80 to go.
Yes.
And so that in itself is a pretty good accomplishment.
Yes.
So anyway, not fast enough. Also, I might add that the area that I think really needs help is sort of the Hispanic group, because they're our largest ethnic group,
Right.
but they really haven't followed suit in either management or board seats.
Right. No,
So-
diversity is still, it was more important this year, and the numbers showed that, but it's not exactly where it should be.
Yeah. So one of the things that jumped out to me was that 27% of new directors were first timers.
Yes.
Okay. So you and I have had this discussion for a long time about boards not having the confidence to take a director that hasn't sat on a board before, that wasn't experienced. And 27% seems to me, I don't remember what 218 said or if you asked the same question, but that seems like a nice number.
And we've seen for the past couple of years boards bringing in first-time directors, and there are a couple of things at play there. One is boards are actually looking for some skill sets that they're not going to get in older people, if you will. If you're looking for somebody who's got a digital background or a technology background, chances are they're going to be somewhat lower in the organization and won't have had board experience. Another thing that's affecting it is that there is a real focus on overboarding and from the investor community, and so and also boards have become, it's a much harder job than it used to be. So active executives do not serve on more than one board. So it's so if you're looking for somebody who's got board experience, they have to almost be retired because they can't take on a second one. So that means, again, you're looking for people who are younger or who don't have that experience yet. And yet, boards are trying to balance. They don't want to bring too many people in who've never been on a board, because it's a different job than being in management, and So it's important that somebody learns that job, and so they're careful about balancing people with board experience with people who are new to the room. But it is definitely something that's been happening and will continue to happen.
So the overboarding has taken on a serious note, though, and I know a fair number of directors that are going to be affected by that. So that will at least help with the turnover a little bit,
Right.
because I assume that rather than to get dinged, they're going to make a decision about their
Right.
boards, because none of them want, all the boards will be affected
Yes,
by that one director sitting on more
than one board.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a good segue, because I wanted to ask you about CEOs. So boards are getting tougher and tougher to demand that CEOs either take only one or in some cases don't take any.
Yeah.
And I think your survey showed that those CEO board seats are declining, the average number of
Yes.
those. So is that what the survey said as well?
Every year we see a decrease in the percent of CEOs who serve on a board. So this year, 59% of the S&P 500 CEOs did not serve on a board other than their own. That it compares to 51% 10 years ago. So they are, whether their boards are restricting them or they're restricting themselves, again, it's a tough job to be a CEO, it's a tough job to be a director. And so a lot of people, CEOs, are just focusing on their day job.
Yeah, well, and I think we're going to see that continuing, I
think
would
so.
expect.
Yeah.
So I always like to ask this, especially as I'm aging so gracefully, okay? I'm always interested in the trends of the mandatory retirement age. So should I be encouraged that 75 is the new 70?
Yeah, right. So, this is, again, something we watch every year, and it changes every year, but there's been, the US boards use age as a methodology for turnover. We still have less than 5% of boards have term limits. That just doesn't change year to year, but the retirement age does. So boards don't have to disclose it, but of the 71% did this year, and almost half have a retirement age of 75 or older. So that's a big change, and that's one of the things we're seeing that has restricted turnover, because people just, when you thought you were going to see turnover when the retirement age was 70 or 72, those individuals are staying longer. And when you really look at who left boards this year, they are people who hit retirement age or who were really close within 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
So it really is the methodology for turnover. And it keeps going up.
Well,
the age.
listen, the closer I get to it, the more I feel that these people are very qualified
That's right,
to serve.
exactly.
But I understand completely why extending it only hurts refreshment.
Right,
Okay,
exactly.
and refreshment, you can't be afraid of refreshment. When
Right.
you look at a board and you say, okay, you need that diversity of experience, and then of new people in today's world.
Yeah.
So you need that blend of things. But if you've got a board that change in mandatory age meant that there's 5 more people that are going to stay, 3 more years or 5 more years, that I think as if I was chairman, okay, or the lead director or head of the nominating committee, I'd have to look at that and say, composition-wise, am I positioned with these people to properly guide this company going forward?
And I think that's really, that's an excellent point, because the world is changing very quickly.
Too quickly.
And, with technology, the impact of global, all of that. So there is a real need in the room for people who are younger and active, and management teams want that. Balanced with people who have wisdom and experience and have been, have seen a lot. But I do think that I think the focus is going to be to think about not everybody ages the same way,
Right.
and it may not be right for everyone to stay, because it does limit the number of
Right.
people you can bring in. And those seats are very valuable, and so I think there's going to be more and more talk about making sure that everybody in that room belongs there and has experience that's relevant to the company today. And it doesn't mean they aren't great directors,
Right.
but if you were brought on as the technologist 10 years ago and you retired 9 years ago, you're wise and you know a lot, but you're probably not as up to date as somebody who's working in a technology company
Yeah.
today. So I think it's very difficult for boards to take this on, but they do need to really assess their directors and whether the skill sets are still really valuable.
Yeah. In fairness, just because somebody's retired doesn't mean that they haven't kept up.
No, that's
you know,
right.
A lot of them make every effort to
Absolutely.
be very up-to-date directors
Right.
and whatever. But at the same time, you and I have both been in boardrooms, a lot of boardrooms. I have often gotten just a total blank stare when I ask the board, have you guys thought through how AI
Right.
affects your business? And when everybody stares blankly back at me, I know that that is something that
Right.
probably hasn't been discussed, and how you cannot discuss the future
Right.
of how that's going to transform businesses. So it's a big issue.
It is. And again, you can have a young director who is working full out in their day job and not able to contribute the kind
Right.
of time and energy to the board. So it's not by prescription. You really have to look at the director and their contribution.
Well, I encourage everybody to read your survey because there's a
Thank
lot
you.
of good information
Yes.
in it. So where can people get a copy?
You can go to the Spencer Stewart website, and we have a board portal, and you can get to it then.
SpencerStewart.com?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Julie, thanks as always. It's
Thank
always a
you.
pleasure to have you here. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, TK.
And that will conclude this episode of Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take another look at a critical topic to help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.